everyone out in not radio land. This is Michael Swaim bringing you another installment of Like Razorblade Pie, a bite-sized book club about the short speculative fiction of Harlan Ellison, my favorite writer of all time. And I'm here with, on our own network, you know her from Shooting Threes, you know her from Cast and the Curious, you know her as the voice of the best podcast intro theme we or any other operation will ever have.
Exactly.
Sarah Griffith, people, folks. Welcome,
Hello.
Sarah.
Thank you for having me. This was such a delight to read.
Oh, I'm so glad. Whenever we do an episode, most generally the homework is to watch a movie, but that's something people largely do anyway. Not everyone reads short stories these days, so I'm always wary. But I try to assign ones that take, what did it take you, 25 minutes to read? It's very short, right?
Oh, yeah. No. It's the perfect short story.
One sitting. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And that's what he does. He does very, campfire-length stories that you could actually tell.
That's a good way to describe it, yeah.
For sure. So let's see, before we dive in, I don't have any introductory or preparatory notes, but basically that's just the PSA saying that I do think you'll get more out of this show if you actually read along, more so than, I don't know if this is weird, but I can totally listen to movie podcasts about movies I've never seen if I like the people.
Yeah.
But I do think it's weird if you're listening to this and you haven't spent the half an hour it took to read the thing.
And honestly, that's generous. That's a half hour if you're thinking from scratch. If you've seen the movie Nope, a lot of the descriptors, you can kind of fill in some of those blanks. So you really don't even have to think. That's what I was thinking of. That was kind of my reference of what I was building. You know, when you read something and you're putting it together in your imagination.
You copy paste.
I was this is
a mosaic of other elements. Yeah. And that's what that's stupid. Everyone says that, but that's what I love about reading. Or I also have gone years without reading and mostly doing audiobooks or podcasts because it's my business. But for this podcast, I've started reading again, and it inspired me to start reading, full length books again. And man, that old feeling of you have to focus and use your imagination or the thing won't come to life, the art won't work, you won't experience it. It's nice. I'm on a mental workout. Most movies don't give you.
I'm on a fiction kick right now, and so I've been doing a lot of mental interior design. When you reread a segment of a book, it's okay, wait, so that's where the kitchen is, and then the living room. That's kind of the fun of mapping out and kind of casting the roles of these characters. I mean, that's no one's saying this, but reading actually takes a lot of imagination and
reading is good,
concentration. Maybe? Yeah, it can be fun. It can be
multiple
fun.
Media can exist. Film doesn't just replace reading, doesn't just replace
talking.
And
I feel like no one's saying this right now. No one's talking about this.
All right. Screw you. Then we'll get back on topic. You mentioned Nope, a connection I didn't make but totally resonates immediately. But in case people didn't read it and we shame them for proceeding, but we can't stop it. What was the story about, quickly in a nutshell, Sarah?
Okay, so the story is about this extraterrestrial vessel that arrives in New York one afternoon. It captures the imagination of everybody, including a man called Bart Chester, who is this failed producer, kind of down on his luck, showman, a real kind of Barker. I'm thinking old-timey circus vaudeville kind of shit. Anyway, this vessel appears. It causes all these sorts of pandemonium. Chester sees this as an investment opportunity. He immediately sees where he can start making money on making this a sideshow. And to his luck and to everyone's amazement, this vessel opens up and weird extraterrestrial, barely corporeal forms come out of this vessel and put together this ritual that just has everybody enchanted for 3 hours at a time. They come to think of this as the performance. The performance happens every day at the same time in New York. Bart Chester sees this as a money-making opportunity. He gets a group of investors that he knows to give him some money, and with that money, he builds Box seats, first row seats, merchandise, brochures, whatever. He finds a way to capitalize on these performances that happen every single day that seemingly go on like clockwork. Everything's working out fine. Cut to 6 years into the run of the performance. These extraterrestrials start to eat people, because I guess this whole time they've never stopped to take a break and take care of themselves. So that's S.R.O, standing room only.
S.R.O. Yeah, that's right. Twist spoiled. I heard your hesitance, but yeah, that's what we do
You know
here.
what?
That's why
It's
we
the
say, hey,
fucking
you should have
plot.
read it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, the twist, and most sci-fi short stories end with a twist.
Of
That's
course.
why I love them. Yeah. So I don't know. I got the impression they fed off applause in some way, like like Pennywise, but instead of fear, it's like adulation. And then there's just a point where that reaches diminishing returns, and they're like, all right, let's eat these motherfuckers. And they go for it. Or that's their ritualized way of, who knows, right? It leaves a lot open for interpretation.
Right.
It could be in their culture, before you invade a planet, it's polite to do this show, and that makes you feel like you're not doing it. I don't know. There's so many explanations you could pull out. But I do want to say, for people who want to read along, I guess it was just spoiled, so I should have said this before. But if you want to find this story specifically, it was first published in 1957 in a magazine, so you can't find that version, likely. And I mentioned that because it's one of his earliest short stories, and I mentioned that because I'm sure it's going to come up later that this writing is now like, he writes stories in the up to the 80s and 90s and 2000s, of course, but this is like hokey. Do you agree? Like, it's hokey ass dialogue.
Yeah.
Like they're saying like, boy, chowder, this is going to be Cracker Jack and shit like that.
Yeah, I got the vibe that like that is this character. Again, that's why I use the term Barker to describe him. Like,
Yeah.
First of all, I do love when an author writes dialect into the dialogue of the character. The short stories I like to read are by Mark Twain, and he's full of that. Like, every word is spelled phonetically. So I kind of like to hear kind of like what the character sounds like. And when they do that, it's a nice little clue. But yeah, I think he's just one of those like, say Mr. types. I don't know.
And nowadays, you can find it in the collection, The Beast That Shouted Love at the Heart of the World. Also, people listening should know that I tweet ahead of time who my guest is going to be and what story we're going to talk about. So follow me at Swaim_Corp on Twitter, and you'll be one step ahead of the game. And I usually also tweet a link to a giant PDF I found called The Essential Ellison that has almost every story we're going to discuss on the show in it. So it's also in there. Okay, back to the juicy discussion. This is probably going to be the easiest one ever on the show so far. But why do you think I paired this story specifically with you, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm a theater kid.
That's right. I feel like it's fair to say, totally get along, really like talking to you, but we're not like best bosom buddies. But one thing I know is you're a theater kid.
Exactly.
So I was like, who better to talk about S.R.O with? And S.R.O has stuck with me since I was a little kid. I think because I'm a theater kid as well, I just thought it was such an interesting application of this kind of twist. Also, I've seen you eat a human being, but that's something we should talk about.
We can. Yeah. That's kind of a spoiler for Cast and the Curious later this year. We'll get to that.
Yeah. So I'll combine the next two questions and ask, like, so was this a wild, out of character, off-brand thing for Sarah to do, to sit down and read a science fiction short story from the late 50s? Or historically, like, have you read a lot of sci-fi? Or what's your, I know you love sci-fi film, but what's your like reading sci-fi history? And in that context, like, what was your big impression of this story? Like, I don't know. How'd you like it?
I'll read anything, truly. The last science fiction thing I read actually was a book I read earlier this year, and it's a bit of a spoiler to say it even becomes sci-fi. It was a book called A Touch of Jen by, I think, Beth Harmon. And I've read a few books like that recently that are contemporary, and it's like about modern issues and modern people, and then at the end there's like a sci-fi turn. But I am not
a Cloverfield Lane, if you will.
Yeah, but sci-fi shorts, nothing comes to mind. I will say, Ellison wrote the Star Trek episode City on the Edge of Forever, which I
We'll
am
cover
familiar
that
with, and that
eventually.
is a banger. And then when I was thinking about it, I was like, I don't really read a lot of sci-fi short stories, but I have seen a lot of Star Trek, and in a way, an episode of Star Trek is like a sci-fi short story.
Oh, that is why it's I'm not gonna say the best ever like show ever made, like intellectually or whatever. That might be The Wire. I'd have to think about it, right? But
Sure.
my favorite show that everyone in my life associates me with and knows that it's my thing that it comforts me the most is definitely Star Trek. And I realized only this year, I think, that I was like, oh, of course I like Star Trek better than because I kept trying new shows that are in the same vein, like The
Yeah.
Expanse and stuff, but they require a different kind of focus because now we do serialized stories. So I actually have to be like, over 7 episodes, I have to remember what that character's deal is and their ongoing story
Right.
threads. And there's something actually comforting about how I can know that it's self contained, like X-Files, Star Trek. The way it's now considered kind of hokey, but I hope it makes a comeback because I really
Yeah,
like
Doctor Who
that you're
does
like, this is a
some
sci-fi short story and it's done.
Yeah, like they have some episodes that are like beautifully self-contained, and it's like this is so easy for like Star Trek and Doctor Who are great because there's a lot of episodes, but it's easy to be like, well, watch this one, which is a completely contained thing, and you can get the idea whether or not you want to like commit yourself further. Doctor Who has become much more um overarching themes, and they've developed more into like a proper TV show, but that's
Hmm.
another talk
Or
about sci-fi
modern.
short
Let's just
story
say
on
modern.
TV.
Because I
Yeah.
think both forms definitely have something to offer. I feel like the short form fiction and anthology fiction are like, Black Mirror also qualifies as what we're talking about. Um, the successes tend to be based around an idea and you go, that's such a clever idea, or wow, that idea really hit me in the feels or whatever. And then serialized is more like, I like this character and I want to ride along with them for a while. And most, as a story, as a lifelong storyteller, I found most people actually come to story mostly to get to know characters.
Mm.
But there's a minority of people who like, I just give me the idea and the characters can all die at the end. That's fine of the episode, or it's whatever services your idea. Go for it. I want to know what your hook is, man. What's your hook? So we talked about it a little, but I'll keep this real brief. But yeah, if you don't, because you said mainly your knowledge is through, he wrote for TV. He also wrote for Twilight Zone quite a bit. But I think that's the only Star Trek he wrote, but it's considered like one of the best episodes of the original series. And I think it's interesting to note that he had, a 50 or 60-year career and flowed with the times and definitely grew. So we'll be covering like stories later, like I think it's called The Space Between, which now sounds so stupid because of the Creed song, but it was 20 years before
Yeah,
that.
right.
The Region Between. No, it's not so bad. The Region Between. But anyway, shit where he like writes in a spiral and it's super psychedelic and he, there's like foreign language in it you have to translate. So like he gets really weird, but this one is like a super button down, straightforward. This happens and this happens and this happens. And as we said,
Mm-hmm.
with like the dialect example. So I just wanted to ask, was there anything that jumped out at you? I anticipated you'd think it's corny, but you said you liked it. So like, let's dig into that for a minute.
I mean, it's corny in the way that yeah, I do expect most short stories to have some like final paragraph, final sentence, and it's like, and they were real people all along, or some fucking, like, yeah, I guess corny in that way.
A twist has to come. Or
Right. Like I
yeah.
knew the other shoe was going to drop, but what is great about the medium of a short story is that it's not going to dick me around for too long. It's like I know it's coming, but I don't have to wait too long. So I can just kind of like say yes to whatever it is I'm reading. You had also asked me prior to this episode, like, hey, like as you're reading, like, can you think like what's going to happen next? And I didn't really have to worry about that because I know it's only like a few pages long. So it's like, all right, I can just like park it here and just let this unfold. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to worry too much about reading between the lines because it's not going to take me too long to
Mm-hmm.
know what is going to happen.
So you didn't guess the ending preemptively.
I just kind of knew, like, I bet something sick
Or you're like,
is going to
something
happen.
bad.
I was like,
Yeah.
I bet it's going to be some shit. Again, I just read this book, Touch of Jen, and I did not care for it in the end because the ending just like kind of collapsed in on itself. And in the last 40 pages, I went through like 10 different ideas of how it was going to end. And each of those 10 endings that I came up with, I thought were better than what actually ended up. So, coming off of a book that had like a disappointing ending to this, which is such a strong, compact piece of writing. Yeah, I was like, I'm taking a fucking vacation here. I'm just going to let this unfold and I'm just going to read this in real time and not try to think too much, which ultimately led for a great reading experience.
Yeah. Yeah, just going with it. So if, believe it or not, there's reviews of short stories. So like so I found a review of this short story from 1957
Interesting.
when it came out, because sci-fi short stories were like we're like somewhere between radio plays and television shows. Like they filled that same, there was a time where
Yeah.
they were a dominant form of like how to kill time and entertain yourself was to read a short story. And
Wow, I
now we
never
do
thought of
TV
that,
shows
but yeah,
instead.
totally.
And they full on got reviewed and shit and had whole magazines that just reviewed and told you which short stories you should read. And all the reviews, and since some like, essays on Ellison, mostly talk about S.R.O. and about the POV, like how that's like the main tool he's using here. So I want to ask, and again, I'm sort of melding some questions that I sent you together here, but I think this will just make it more interesting. Why do you think it's effective, and what did you get from the fact that it's from specifically Bart Chester's POV? Like, why not Eloise's POV, or why not a God POV where he just describes what happened and says like the crowd came in, carnival barkers set up shops, then the aliens ate them. Why are we on the ground with Bart Chester? Why is Bart Chester in entertainment, like in the business side of showbiz? What did you get from all that, and did you think it was effective?
Before I say anything, I do want to again say how much the story reminded me of Nope.
Yeah.
And that actually impacted, I think, the framework of what I was, let me say it a different way. Because I was already familiar with the themes and so much of the storytelling of Nope, I kind of just brought that lens with me with this story unconsciously. Because my big takeaway from this short story, I mean, it's a comment on capitalism, on commercialization. I think through Bart's lens, he sees these performers as a commodity. And I think that is a compelling lens to see this through, because I believe this is how, unfortunately, a lot of people probably would see this. I kind of think of it as like, kind of like our relations with animals. Animals like giraffes and elephants, animals that might be exotic to you and me because
that we might want to look at or stare
right,
at.
because they're not in our backyard. Some people have the reaction to shoot it with a gun. Some people have the reaction to respect these animals. Some people have the reaction to want to ride these animals and,
fuck around,
own
get
these
selfies.
animals.
Yeah.
And what are their motivations? That is actually something, dare I say, compelling about Tiger King, where it's like, well, is it ethical to own these animals at all, even if you are quote unquote rehabilitating them? Like, what does that even mean? And so I think for something that is vague, like these performances, like these performers, I mean, even the way they're described within the text, they're kind of, they're like not corporeal, like they're ephemerate. Is that the term I'm looking for? Like it's almost, yes, it's almost impossible to describe what it is. And so it is important that we are we're experiencing the story through a perspective that we can attach to, and the perspective that Bart has that we as the audience of this book then adopt is one of commercialization, even like labor exploitation, which is kind of the final beat of the
Mm-hmm.
story, that they were starving artists, which that's a little on the nose, a little fucking
Yeah.
cute. But
Yeah,
I
he calls them
mean,
starving artists at the end, then they eat
right.
everyone.
But that's the truth. That is the truth of the matter. So I think experiencing this story through Bart's point of view gives us the point of view of like, this is what it is like to be this kind of person, to see everything in the world as a commodity. That even before he has thought, are these things here to kill us or not? Because I think a lot of people's first instinct would be, is this dangerous? Almost immediately he identifies this as a way to make money, which is, again, a similar beat in Nope. That's like, hey, we can make money off of this thing.
Right.
Even if we can't capture it, even if we can't make it sign a contract, even if we can't force it into a cage, there is still a way to profit off of
just a support structure, even though the
something
show's
that
free.
is undefined.
Right.
Like a true natural wonder of the world. We can still find a way to profit off of it. And I think that is the comment Ellison's making. And we have to have Bart's perspective, because only a character as greedy and, dare I say, selfish as Bart would see dollar signs as soon as he sees a fucking extraterrestrial something. Like, we can't even fully define what it is.
Well, it's also wild that it runs for 6 years and like no one tries to communicate back with them, and there aren't like teams of scientists there. Which he kind of writes around because it's implied that they have us in some kind of thrall, right? Like anyone who approaches,
it's mesmerizing.
It mesmerizes you out to like a wide radius. But I still wonder what's going on in the rest of the world, I guess, or how the rest of the world is reacting now that they know extraterrestrial life is real and it's here. Like, what are they doing in France about this? What do they think? But the story obviously doesn't go there. And it like fudges like that reality of what would actually happen, because they're there for 6 years. It just seems a long time. But anyway, it mesmerizes you, and it puts stories in your head. And every time it's the same stories, and they find the stories like wonderful and awe-inspiring and ennobling and shit. And I think it's I use the word ennobling specifically because people who heard last episode, and I did not do this on purpose, we covered a story called On the Slab about a natural wonder that immediately gets commercialized by a Crass Barker type guy. And I'll just say this. I did a whole show with a guy named Alex Schmidt, and we covered all of Vonnegut, and it did make me realize tricks that Vonnegut uses multiple times that are sort of his thing. And it did make me go, okay, well, he's not like magic to me anymore, but he's still a very good writer. And I hope that's not already happening with Harlan Ellison. But it is very similar to On the Slab, with the exception that I think On the Slab is about God, our relationship to God.
Yeah.
This is not. This is totally about our relationship to entertainment and acting specifically.
Yes.
Although it does make me wonder the way it's set up. Like, what if the aliens do this play and they're trying to communicate with us? Like, that's their method of communication, and no one ever responds to them, and they do it for 6 years and no one responds, and they're like, I guess these are mindless animals because they never responded, so it's okay to eat them. There's many ways you could like interpret what's going on. So okay, I want to dig into what I think the story is really about, which is acting. We've kind of covered like Bart Chester represents, right, which I kind of agree with. I mean, I'm living it. Let me know if you disagree, but like, show business is very much a business. The money actually really matters. All these, half of it is making money and most of it is designed to make money. So like, even though there's that magical kernel of, I want to be an artist and exist in this plane of like feeling and emotion and expression, which is there's like a huge bunch of bullshit around it that's designed to make money.
Yeah. I always think, I mean, like the history of even theater, it's always been a way that we've communicated with one another. And I do fundamentally believe art and capital do not mix. And we have we have like this perverse, we have to mix them because like fundamentally we all have to make money in order to live. The way our society is set up, the way our society is set up, I have to, but you know what I mean? Like it's unfortunate that they do have to make bedfellows, but they do not make good ones, because I think fundamentally it's the opposite. Like these two things are fire and water.
Well, show business, especially when it comes to executive producers and actors who really become, globally famous, um, there's like a 1%. It's almost an exaggerated microcosm of the problem with capitalism in America right now, writ large. Like, I don't know if I would love to crunch the numbers and see if it's even more or less extreme. But if you just took like everyone who's trying to break into quote unquote the industry and measured all their salaries, um, people kind of think of it as a high paying job, but that's like 0.05% of actors
Yeah.
make 99.8% of the money. Most actors and look at what's happening with the AI art. That's a more complicated, nuanced discussion because capitalism's the real problem there as well. But most artists are scraping by such that, an advent of something like AI art completely wrecks their ability to
Yeah.
make ends meet using art. Like, art is not lucrative for the most part. And then the exceptions, of course, are like exaggeratedly the other way. Okay. So I know you've done theater and I know you've been filmed, and done both repeatedly. So without, I guess, skipping over the stuff that I do feel like people know, like, the difference is, shooting on film is a bunch of standing around and wait and hurry up and wait. But I'm talking about the moments you're actually acting, right?
Mm.
I just want to talk about, like, is there magic in that to you? What attracts you to acting and keep doing it? Do you get a different feeling acting on stage than acting on not the systems, not the rehearsal and the differences of the culture, but like, the acting part? Does it feel different?
Yeah.
And do you use different tactics in each case?
Yeah, no, it really is a feeling. It really is the feeling. Like when I'm acting on stage, I actively am feeling the audience. The audience is actively feeling me. I I can hear the audience even when they're not making a sound. I'm obviously not, I mean, I'm acting, I'm obviously paying attention to what I'm doing in the scene, who I'm
What
talking
you
to,
got to
where I'm
say
standing,
next?
whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's almost like we're sharing a collective breath. And just like you don't think about every time you inhale and exhale, it's the same. It like the audience becomes a part of me in like that way where it's like I don't even have to like consciously think about them. We are collectively together. There's a harmony. Something that Ellison writes about with the performance is that these performers, Bart describes it as like he knew their names and he knew what they were like and what they and how they knew each other, like almost instantly without word at all. He knew how they all connect with one another and how this story and how this performance makes sense. I think that's so true uh, when you're watching a play. A character, just by the way they walk on stage, you're like, oh, yeah. No, like before a character has even said a word, yeah, I understand. I kind of get it. Oh, he's like older and tired, cranky. He's got a limp, or oh, he's the way he's walking. Like you can feel that energy. It's not just a visual cue. There's, for lack of a better word, a vibe. There really is a vibe. There really is a harmony. When you can speak words and you can hear the words echo back in a stage, in the
Mm.
audience, it really is a shared collective experience. I feel very strongly about that. And then when you're working on camera, it's more of an individual experience. There, I don't necessarily have an audience that I'm vibing with. Like, yes, there are people on set. Yes, I can feel the energy of the other actor and the director. And I can even kind of feel like, oh, yeah, like the guy holding the boom, like he was really watching me. Like, I can feel that energy. But also,
Mm.
like, some people when they're working on set, if they're watching me act, they're not doing their job. So I can't like ask for the attention. I can't say like, hey, are we all paying attention and all feeling the same way I'm feeling? Because that's the same thing too. Like on stage, the audience, we are feeling things together. When I'm acting on camera, I am
Or at
feeling
least the
things. And
bulk of the audience is feeling whatever the play wants them to feel, and we're all feeling it together at the same time in concert.
right.
Yeah.
And then on camera, like in terms of how an audience is going to watch me on a screen, I just have to have faith that what I am putting out and what I am experiencing can be relatable and translatable. And kind of the scary thing with that is that I have to let that go because I can't feel the audience with me. I don't know how they're going to respond. When I'm on stage, I'm like, this is going to get a laugh. People are going to be shocked at that. That's going to be a moment. Like I can predict, and because I know this is what I'm leading the audience to, but on camera, I don't have that power because I'm not even fucking editing the thing. Like I don't even know what the audience is or is not going to see. So it's more like creating a piece of art and putting it in a museum.
Well, film and theater are among the most collaborative mediums, so I think when you enter them, you already have to let go of a lot, right? Like you're at the whim of so many factors: writing, lighting, how they edit it.
But I feel
strongly in a good way.
When I'm on stage, I'm like a shepherd, and I can lead people. Like it doesn't matter what the water looks like or where it is. I can bring people to that. On camera, I just have to have trust that I can make that connection through literal time and space.
Yeah, to make the piece of art effective, I would actually argue that the actor is bearing more weight and is more crucial in a theater context than a film context, which is funny because, you know, I know you can, but listener, like name 5 famous actors of the stage right now. Okay, now name 50 famous like movie people, and you totally can.
I feel strongly that
even ones who don't put in good performances, and you know that about them, but
I was
like
just
him
gonna
anyway.
Say, you don't have to be a good actor to be an on-camera actor because
not as good.
So long as you're likable.
Likability can do it.
But on stage, you have to create that likability.
Do you have stage fright at all? Because I do have some more on stage and less on film, and I want to know if that's the same or different for you.
No, I feel so much more comfortable in front of people because again, they are exhaling the same air that I'm inhaling. Like we are together. We really are together.
Juices are being slopped in one bucket.
Normally, when I'm in front of an audience, we all have a common interest and a common goal. And I know what they're here to see.
Well, they're self-selecting. Ideally, they wouldn't be there unless they're passingly interested in theater and the play in question, right? So you're set up for success, at least in that way. Although, I mean, when I majored in theater in undergrad, we have got the thing where the front 2 rows are very rich, very old people who come to every show and fall asleep. And that was sometimes disheartening. But the other thing that stands out to me about the difference of the 2 experiences, and I wonder if it resonates, and even if it doesn't, that's even more interesting to me. But I have a very, very busy mind that never shuts up. It's like my lifelong goal to stop like looping intrusive thoughts and stuff and be able to stop thinking. And meditation, I mean, I'm still trying it, but I'm still mostly thinking the whole time.
Yeah.
Like it kind of works. Not great for me though. And then, but one time my meditation app guy was like, you know, a visualization where you place yourself. When was the last time or what was the space where you did feel like your mind was quiet and restful? And I realized it's from the second if I've rehearsed the piece well, which I usually do because I'm an over prepare. From the second I step on stage to the second I leave stage, my mind is completely calm. Like, and even the stage fright immediately goes away, and I'm just focused on being there with the people, and I trust that we did it 50 times. Like, I know what to do. I am thinking thoughts like, am I getting my light? Oh, I have to do this next. But somehow my mind does feel like it has a lot of space. And then on film, not at all. I feel like I'm at almost like a day at the office. My thoughts are basically normal. I feel like myself, which means my mind is very busy because you spend a lot of time just standing around talking with your friends. So you're already, it just feels normal. Like it just feels like a day at the office to me.
Yeah. No, I totally, for me, what it is the difference between stepping over the threshold of backstage to being on stage and being in the show versus not in the show.
It's a rush.
The difference between being on set and then being on my mark and we're about to start rolling is that when I'm acting, it's not about me. It's about me the whole time I'm backstage getting ready. I'm thinking, what am I going to do? What if this happens to me? I. And then as soon as I'm on stage, it's literally not about me in any way, shape, or form. It's about the character. It's about respecting the story. It is also about like caring that the audience gives a fuck, because that's something I was kind of known for in college, was reminding people like, you know, people have to watch this shit. You know, like just keep that in mind when you're speaking at 7 miles per hour and milking every word within an inch of your life. Like, people do have homes that they have to get back to. And then same with when I'm acting on camera, it's like, it stops being about me. It's like, I care about, oh, do I have this hair in my mouth? Last looks. Am I standing right? Is this going to make me look thin on camera?
Am I
Whatever.
helping
And then
keep us on
action.
schedule?
Yeah. And then action. I don't have to think about any of that shit anymore because it doesn't matter.
Do the thing. Yeah, but it still feels more like doing a physical thing you practice, like gymnastics or whatever. When I'm on film,
I think acting
like,
in
okay,
sports
it's
is very
time,
similar.
do the thing. Oh yeah, interesting.
I think this is why I like sports. And I could even make the argument that sports is art. Because I think it requires a similar discipline. You've seen
they
athletes,
should just call it Sparts, and it should refer to both
and
collectively.
fund both of them equally. And look at that.
There you go.
Yeah, but you hear these athletes mic'd up or like after interviews and like, yeah, just went out there to have a really good game. But like on the field, it's like, you were an animal. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a different
being in the zone.
And like how you can overcome the mental, like you are gonna throw a javelin right now to maybe win an Olympic gold fucking medal that you've sacrificed everything in your entire life for this moment. How do you answer that moment? How do you get in that zone and are able to pull together that focus? Because just like you and I are talking about, like being on stage, being on camera, some people would sooner fucking jump off a bridge before they ever did anything like what we're talking about. In the same way, I'd sooner jump off a bridge before I'd ran a marathon. But it's a discipline, and I think anyone is capable of doing it, but the people who are capable of doing it well, it's like, for lack of a better term, it's like a real magic. It's like a spell. It's like this level of hyper focus that almost goes beyond scientific explanation. It's like they are just good at that thing. Like, I saw people joking about, like, I guess Lionel Messi has autism, and it's like, that's why he's good at soccer, because his mind is capable of just zeroing in on just soccer, on just football. And because he has that high level of concentration, it doesn't matter that he's not the physically most strongest athlete or most, like, his agility doesn't matter. It's the focus that ultimately matters, and that's what makes him a champion. And I think that's true of all artists. It's not necessarily even your abilities. It's that ability to fucking focus and just like drop into it.
Well, that's why now, that word got out, and now people are fielding like whole teams where everyone on the team's neurodivergent and they slay on the field, but then in the locker room, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, and I
like a whole team of people with borderline. Oh, no good.
Yeah, well, I also think that's why, like, actors and other artists get the bad rep for being like fucking wacky crazy, and it's like, okay, but some of the shit these performers are doing, yeah, that is like beyond a normal human mind or a neurotypical
the
human
bulk
mind.
Of people
like,
would not seek out that experience. Yeah.
Yeah, like it makes, because it requires like that hyper focus. It really does. I've really come to appreciate hyper focus as something that can be a beautiful thing.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, mindfulness, I feel like overlaps with that, and that mindfulness, when you bring that level of focus to another actor on stage, but not when I'm filming, I find you also get there's a level of shared emotional intimacy because you're walking a tightrope together that you rehearse together, where it doesn't matter if you in most cases, right, the show ends and you never talk to that person again, or you're not particularly close but they're fine, like you have nothing against them, but like in that moment it's so intimate. It's like you're lovers. Like if you're doing an intense scene with an acting partner, it's very vulnerable.
Yes, it can be embarrassing. Like that is something I say often. Like, as much as I love acting, as much as I don't have a problem with this, fundamentally it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
It is. Like, it is not what a lot of people would think of as comforting.
It is to be ashamed of. No. All right, I'm going to take us. I think that was great. Thank you for those insights. But now I'm going to take us into silly territory. but questions I think are just as vital, if not more.
Yeah. No. These were
If
thinkers.
you could only go to one show and you knew that at the end the performers of the show were going to eat you, what kind of show would you want to see? You could pick a real show, or you can just say like a kind of show.
I would like to see something extravagant and shallow and ultimately foreign.
Hmm.
Because if the end ritual is all of us die at the end, I can at least be like, oh, well, I guess that's just the tradition of these people. You know what I mean? Like, I could
Mm.
justify it. If
If
it's
it's part
like,
of the show,
oh, well, this
like if it
is
makes sense at
like
the end of the
if
show.
you could spin me some yarn, like, oh, this, I mean, much like the
So
plot of
you just want
Cats.
consistency.
Yeah,
Like you
like
just want the story to
if it,
wrap up.
if it's the last thing I'm ever gonna see, like I want to see a true spectacle. I don't want to
Hmm.
see like a thinker or, it doesn't even have to
Right,
be
right.
like, I'm actually like, not to think of a movie, but RRR, it's like, yeah, show me like a 3 hour, like romantic spectacle. And something from a group of people, let's say that maybe I'm unfamiliar with. And
Hmm.
then at the end, it's like, well, okay, I guess this is just like what it is. It
Yeah.
is
You make me
actually,
realize if it was like a poignant, like if I'm looking at it from that context, I'm going to die at the end of this. I want to say then Planet Earth or a nature documentary, but that's not live. So,
but I don't want
but you're
anything
right.
to remind me of humanity. You know what I mean? And I
No.
feel like when I watch something poignant, emotionally poignant, I leave like, wow, I'm thinking about the people in my life, the experiences of my life. If I'm going to die, I'd rather not think about my own mortality because that I don't want to live the last few seconds of my life thinking like, wait, I don't want to die. I want to see something that is like, actually, what I'm describing is the Jellicle Ball.
Oh God.
I mean, think about
Here
it.
we go.
Somebody does die at the end of that.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I just mean because nature's my favorite pretty thing to look at. But I think I'd probably actually pick the Hal Holbrook one man show where he plays Mark Twain because it would be funny to that Hal Holbrook has to eat me at the end all by himself.
Oh, I
You'd be
hadn't
like,
even
oh
thought about
God, here
the
we go.
physical
He'd be
eat
so
part. Yeah.
exasperated. Yeah.
Yeah, I picture like a really big cast and I'd be overcome like The
It
Last of
would
Us.
be easy. They just
Yeah.
split you up real quick. Each one gets a bite. Yeah. Or an animal show could work, of course. The eating part would be more sensible. All right,
Mhm.
moving on. If a bunch of giant aliens came down and just started like doing performance art, um, how do you think that would go in today's modern society?
I mean, immediately gunfire. I think immediately.
I think we'd attack them right away, right? We'd
Yeah,
nuke the city or something.
and that's unfortunate. Again, kind of like what I talked about with elephants. Like, I definitely think there will be people that will be like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, hang on! Like,
You shouldn't have
this is
done that,
beautiful, and we should respect."
right?
And
But
I
it'll
think
be too late.
there's gonna be that backlash. But I just think like, and not even before the government can get involved. Like, surely people in New York have guns and would gladly unload onto some extraterrestrial being. I feel like that is unfortunately the human response to something you don't understand is bullets a lot of the time.
Like if they refuse to communicate and they're exhibiting signs of controlling the minds of the populace, I feel like someone's gonna shoot at that at some
Yeah,
point.
I almost think immediately, like almost as soon as we
Yeah.
can see it, it's gonna be gunfire.
Or like a quick attempt by NASA to communicate and then it's like they're not responding. Okay, then shoot at them. Like I think it would happen that quickly.
Yeah.
Um I'm gonna skip the next one because realize no answer will actually be truly funny or insightful. Dumb question. But last but not least, if humans had to make alien contact, so you know that extraterrestrial life for the first time will become aware of Earth and our culture and society, but the only way you can is you're going to send a theater troupe in a rocket, and they're going to perform their one show. Like, what show would you send?
Okay.
Musical, straight play? What would
Yes.
we send?
I've
It
a-
represents Earth, Sarah.
I've thought about this a lot, and I have also spent a lot of time researching the Golden Record
Oh, right, of
album.
course. That we sent into space to hopefully communicate with aliens. Yes.
And the contents of that has really informed my thinking here. I have two answers. If it is a matter of life and death, I would actually go with stomp because
Nice.
there's no language.
Threaten the aliens.
Well, listen, it's music.
It's an aggressive show.
It's music, though. There's no language that is as universal as the language of music. It demonstrates that we are complex, dynamic creatures with brains. We are, in my effort in saving humanity and sending Stomp is that this would show to the aliens that, like, we are intelligent life forms and this is what we can create from scratch.
It does imply a lot about us without having to say speech.
Exactly. It's basically like we can do math. And that's how I'm proving with Stomp. So then if
you did pick a show with any lines at all, that would let them know that we communicate via spoken language. Isn't that useful information?
Well, I mean, so that would be like life. We have one opportunity to prove to these people that we are worth living. If I
For
was
the record,
send...
I did not say in the question that they're going to destroy Earth. I was thinking of a peaceful.
Well, listen, that's why I have my second answer. If this is just, hey, this is who we are. This is what we've got. Not a very sophisticated answer, but I'm going to go with The Lion King because visually very interesting, dynamic. I think it shows the human imagination, what we're capable of. I think the novelty has worn off, but remember when that show first came out? And Julie Taymor,
and Titus, the one she art directed. Yeah, Julie Taymor's a legit genius.
Yes.
Even though, because Lion King's a Disney thing, we're like, that was just some musical. Julie Taymor's actually like legit.
Brilliant. Also, I don't think that there is a living, intelligent creature in this universe that would not succumb to the circle of life. Like,
it's beautiful.
That says it.
Yeah,
that says
really
it right there. Like, and it's
a story from Africa where mankind originated. I like that.
Right. Yeah. Like, even and the music is just fucking good. Like, again, I go
back...
it's
got Hamlet. It's got Hamlet baked into it, so they're getting Shakespeare.
Like, it's kind of a silly answer because it's like, oh, Disney fucking first musical, but like, I think it says a lot about humanity. And it is a story that we have been drawn to in fiction time and time and time and time again.
Totally. Disney plus Hamlet plus familial interactivity plus like our belief in spiritual duality because Mufasa comes back as a cloud. The circle of life as a concept. It's got spoken language.
It's spiritual.
It's
got logical. It's scientific. It's mathematical.
It's got impressive craft.
It's artistry. It's true artistry from top to bottom. Yeah.
And I'm saying like that's not even my favorite musical. Fuck that I would not. Number one with a no, but
fuck no.
Good choice still for the aliens. Yeah,
I think it's just if someone's like I've never seen a musical before a day in my life.
I will only see one.
I would. I'd be like, well, The Lion King is easy to watch. Shit, you don't really have to think hard about that one, and it is good.
True. All right, that takes us to Harlan's parlance. A segment based around the fact that those words almost rhyme.
I like it.
Were there any specific lines that stood out to you? Because the reason Harlan Ellison is my favorite author is twofold. I'm a junkie for sci-fi stories with good twists, and over this 50, 60 years, he wrote many, many good hooks and twists lie therein. And I find that he actually has insights that resonate also in the like, wow, that's actually mind blowing, or that applies to my life. Wow, I never thought about that. But then also the aspect that I actually just think his language sentence to sentence. Like, I think he's an incredible craftsman, a la Julie Taymor, but with writing, like his construction of words.
Yeah.
I have to note that this story is not one of the reasons I think that per se. I mean, 1957 is very early in his career, but that said, were there lines that stood out to you that you might want to throw out?
Yeah, not necessarily dialogue. Yeah, I mean, this is not like a crazily written piece. I think it's pretty much like this happens, this happens, this happens.
Transparent.
But I did enjoy, I have a whole little paragraph here. The description of the performers doing the performance. He says he could never quite describe what they were, and the only thing he knew for certain was that they were beautiful. The lines were suspended in air and of colors he had never known existed. They were parallel and cross streamers that lived between the reds and blues of Earth. I really love that description because it's kind of hard. Like the easy way to say it is like he was watching something he had never seen before. But
Right.
specifically the lines that lived between the reds and blues of Earth, like we are seeing something that is beyond description because we as humans could not even fathom that something like this could exist.
In this moment, the words are demanding that you work your imagination as hard as you can. Like, imagine something
Exactly.
incomprehensible is the offer, and
Exactly.
you're like, wow,
I
okay.
often think about how like that human beings for a long time couldn't see the color blue or some shit like that.
Right.
Like
Because they weren't consciously differentiating it from gray, is the
right.
theory.
Like
Yeah.
it's not that we've never seen anything before. We have never consciously seen this before.
Seen it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to
That's
write
great.
a
Yeah.
science fiction description of like, which again, why Nope was kind of helpful to think of because I was like, well, I can kind of picture that.
Yeah.
But
Well, I feel like H.P. Lovecraft got the hang of it, and then that's all he did. That's basically his one
yes,
trick, is to say something. It's so hard to describe that you'll have to imagine it. I can't even describe it. That's like his main deal, and being racist.
yeah, of course.
Mhm. But sorry, I cut you off. Did you have a final thought?
No, I was just gonna reiterate, like it's so hard in science fiction to try to describe something that literally does not exist.
Or
Um,
feels truly alien? Yeah.
yeah, but this really that passage and further descriptions of the vessel and the performance itself, like really illustrates in like not a dumb like no, I promise you've never seen anything like this before, but it really is like I get the sense that we as humans watching this performance, we're trying to contextualize it, but there's just nothing to contextualize it with.
Right. I mean, it's like writing when you're trying to write a brilliant scientist who's smarter than you are because you're just a writer. Um, a good way to do that is to not fully describe the science because you can't,
Right.
because it's not real. So I feel it's funny that he's like, they put on a show so good that all of Earth is mesmerized for 6 years. What happens in the show? Well, I can't really describe
Right.
it, but it is so good that Earth is mesmerized for 6 years. And you're like, okay. That's like, you just got to buy that for the sake of the story, I think. All right, I'll rattle off a few. I liked people jostled him and a knot began to form as though he were a catalyst for some chemical action. Gives me a great view of, there's a show that sadly got canceled after one season that Abe and I really like called Manhattan. The intro sequence shows one scientist entering a room and then many more gathering around him, and you realize as the shot zooms up that they're replicating atoms densifying to start an atomic explosion because it's about the Manhattan Project. And I always thought that was such a clever connection of that image to that image, is like Manhattan Project was bringing a bunch of people together densely, and so is making an atomic bomb. And this is like the same visual, but I'm like, I still love that visual. And shut my mouth because apparently I forgot they put snipers on the roof and the army is there. They just never attack. So as we find out in this quote, after 3 weeks, the army was called away from around the ship, which
Yeah.
had done nothing but produce the performance regularly each evening to quell a prison riot in Minnesota. I love that sentence could have ended without saying the last thing. That's just like the cynical fucking, that's so Harlan Ellison.
Yeah.
Like, he is also very snide and cynical. And I love that he threw in that barb that, like, he could have just said the army was withdrawn because they seem not to be a threat. But he's like, oh no, they had to go oppress incarcerated people. I'm like, that's just very Harlan. The ultimate example of me going, all right, language changes. This is corny as hell now. Is when he talks about how the performance starts to get actual written reviews where people do try to explain its beauty and, convey that. And he says, Variety said, ETs turn in. ETs are Sacco in plush review.
Oh God.
Imagining, I just love old Hollywood language. Like, I'm imagining like John Wick 4 does Baby Boo Boo Boffo box office like as a headline today.
We gotta bring that back. Old timey review language.
Yeah,
we need
this show was
hyperbole
Sacco.
again in our
God,
reviews.
Sacco.
I'm sick of this fucking. Like, I want to hear something was like a revolution of film.
Mm-hmm. I do. Do better, all filmmakers. All right. Finally on this show, we wrap out with 6 stupid one-liner jokes written by myself and our guest. I don't know why I did this. I'm trying to think back to why I made this segment. I think it's because I like writing jokes, because I've done it so long. It's just a habit.
That's so
and
weird of
so
you.
that
Oh my God.
Oh, really? And so that a joke will exist for every Harlan Ellison short story, just in the universe. I want that to be true. If you'd take us away, Sarah, did you write your jokes?
I did.
All right, hit me with number one.
I'm looking for them, but this
replicates the embarrassing feeling of stepping on stage.
No. I remember one I wrote because it was such a fucking reach, but I said, the most lucrative box seats you could buy since the Lincoln assassination. Such stupid fucking.
That's good. Yeah.
Really?
Are you saying you can't access your other two? Is that what's happening?
No. I was able to locate them, but
oh, great. Okay.
That was just from memory because I was so proud of coming up with that fucking little.
Nice, as you well should be. My first. It was a fine performance from the aliens, but man, now if Meryl Streep turned 40 feet tall and ate everyone, now that's a show.
Very nice. I said. The performance follows the ultimate rule of acting, always leave him wanting more. This time they were wanting more life. I didn't write good ones. I'm sorry.
No, but you shot the moon on that one's bad enough that it still made me pop. This is my second one. Weird. This show got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, but the audience score is, oh, dear God, I'm being devoured alive.
I did a lazy one here. I just said typical actors.
Oh,
honestly.
Yeah, I had one along those lines, but I cut it because I thought it was too inside baseball. So I'll just say dinner and a show. Ooh la la. That's all.
Oh, brother.
We're done here.
Yeah,
oh, brother.
That's a wrap.
Pretty corny this time. But I did improv in high school, so
yeah, this book, it's corny. I would say it's pulp. You know what I mean?
It's a pulp story, yeah, for sure.
It's
especially because it ends with everyone dies.
Yeah, especially when something's pulpy, it's like I don't really think it's corny because like it knows it knows.
Agreed.
It's like it's like fun, you know. It's just for fun.
So if you want to have fun, check it out. You just heard everything. Not just about what happens, but pretty much all the insights I think you can glean from it. So read it anyway, I guess, if you feel like it. Otherwise, if you want to know what we're covering next time, as I said, check me out on Twitter. Sarah, where can people find you, follow you, and what's active for you right now that you want to promote?
I am at Twitter, SK_Griffith. Bridget and I and a few other people are working on a web series, New Low. We are getting dates together for that. It's coming together nicely now. We're kind of like putting together this puzzle. Listen to the new Rough Stuff. We back, baby.
Nice. Rough Stuff's back. Wow, Rough Stuff.
Yeah, we accidentally put the show in hiatus, and in that time we were able to kind of like retool it so we could actually reliably do it every month. So we got that, and then with the new Fast and Furious movie coming out this year, Bridget and I will be doing a hat trick. So it's going to be shooting threes, there's going to be Rough Stuffs, and there's going to be at least one new
CNC.
Cast and Curious this year. So everyone subscribe to Small Beans across all platforms, become a patron because it's going to be a crazy year.
Hell yeah. Well plugged, as your plugs always are.
Thank you.
Yeah, patreon.com/smallbeans. There's a lot of good stuff there you can only get that's behind the paywall. We hope, of course, if you're just subscribed to the free feed that you're getting a lot out of it. We try to put out a lot of content, but behind the paywall, there's exclusive stuff like Escape from the Multiverse, Star Trek The Next Futurama, special bonus episodes of I'll Show You Mine If You Show Me Yours, and even Spiel Boys, where they're going through all the works of Steven Spielberg. That's also good. That's the newest one. So way more podcasts than you probably need coming soon. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
And that's it. we done.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you!